Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Looking at a professional website without breaking your budget, Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960, or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, time to give official shout out to our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international war-winning author Mia Molson-Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you'll love Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. Takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, 1 target, where truth is an illusion and those you love will be the first go missing. It's available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing by Mia Molson-Zia has garnered great reviews in Eve 11 endorsed by Howard celebrities, including Joanna Cassidy, Forbes Riley, and many others. So grab your copy today for Goes Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon. Also, check out the Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com on over 40 podcast platforms, heard in over 100 countries, including Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also, Anchor FM, iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, Audible, Apple Music, and more. Also, heard on HamiltonRadio.net, Diamonds FM, Oldies Radio, and a few other networks to follow. Take the Mike Wagner Show on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. And for great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com and check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast. T-shirts, pop sockets, throw pillows, tote bags, hoodies, baseball gear, and more. Makes great gifts 24/7. Go to Amazon.com and check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast. And for more great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com/Mia Molson-Zia for great books like Missing, Once, and Wrinkles. Also T-shirts, pop sockets, hoodies, phone cases, and more. Amazon.com/Mia Molson-Zia. Check it out today. I'll support the Mike Wagner Show on Anchor FM, PayPal, the MikeWagnerShow.com. You can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com at the Mike Wagner Show. Make sure you do so today. We're here with a terrific lady who's an author of a book and a strong woman who survived years of abuse as a child. And now she tells her side of the story in a memoir, which we'll talk about, profound and compelling, that traces her life as a survivor of child abuse, sex trafficking, illegal pharmacological research, and institutional abuse. And she has an advanced degree in clinical psychology and recognized national expert and catalyst for change. Also, powerful storyteller, and how she's able to endure and what possesses and everything else. And her wisdom comes from the field of psychology, transcendental development, and spiritual psychology. She's also author of the book Darkness Was My Candle, an Odyssey of Survival and Grace. And live, ladies and gentlemen, from the Plus Studios somewhere in beautiful West Virginia, en route to a book signing and more, we have the very amazing author of the book Darkness Was My Candle, an Odyssey of Survival and Grace. Ladies and gentlemen, the multi-talented Lora DeVore. Lora, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
Good evening. It's wonderful to be here. I'm honored to be on your show.
Well, it's great to have you on board, Lora, and you've got an amazing story to tell. You're a strong woman who survived years of abuse as a child, and now you're telling your side of the story in a memoir, and it's profound and compelling that basically just traces your life as a survivor of child abuse, sex trafficking, illegal pharmacological research, and also institutional abuse. You have an advanced degree in clinical psychology and a recognized national expert and a catalyst for change, powerful storyteller, and also you also managed to just how you survive and give advice and everything. Your wisdom comes from the field of psychology, transcendental development, and spiritual psychology. And also here to talk about your book, Darkness Was My Candle, an Odyssey of Survival and Grace. And before getting to all that, Lora, tell us how it first got started.
I'm sorry.
Tell us how you first got started.
Well, I was writing a very different book, and I had a writing mentor at the time, and I went out to the West Coast because she writes a book every summer and takes a sabbatical. And she had asked me if I'd be willing to come and be her scribe. She's in her 80s, and drive her to northern Washington State, because she was interviewing elders on the Yakima Reservation and had hoped we could also get into Hanford Nuclear Site, which I had never heard of. And I'm very aware that a lot of people don't know what Hanford is. It's the place in which we mined plutonium and uranium that created the atom bomb. And it's where we continue to bury nuclear heads from warships. And it's leaking into the groundwater. and poisoning the salmon in the rivers, and the incidence of cancer on the Yakima Reservation, as well as the downwinders, farmers, is astronomical. And so I drove out to her house in Southern California. And I was there for 3 days before we left for our trip. And she asked me if I would do some research for her. And so I was on the computer, and suddenly it was as though a nightmare came up on the computer, a nightmare from my own past. And what came up was the words Elgin State Hospital.
Oh, yes, yes. I heard about that. I thought it might have been a blue screen or something that says you've been infected, but Elgin State, I'm glad. I don't know if I could say it's like a virus or something, but yeah, just go ahead with it. So,
And the reason it came up is because they had been doing experimentation on patients at Elgin during one point in its history. Now, it was before I was a patient there, but that's the reason it came up, because they were actually injecting hospital patients at Elgin State Hospital uranium shots.
ooh,
And all kinds of things happened because of that. And of course, people got very sick and they died. But I was stunned to see the words on the screen. And later that day, Dina Metzger, who was my writing mentor, she asked me how the research was going. And I told her it was okay, but that I had something come up from my past. And by then she knew a lot about me, but I was writing a very, very different book. And she looked at me when I told her about the state hospital. She said, "And why did I never know you were in a state hospital?" And I realized that this is probably 7, 8 years ago, that at that point, I still had shame about it. There were a few people that knew that.
wow.
And I also knew by the end of our trip together that I needed to write. And it almost felt like a spiritual mandate. I knew that whether I was comfortable writing about that period in my history and other dark periods of my life, that I needed to do that. And in part, I needed to do it because it became clear that so many people never made it out of there, and so many people never had a voice. So it felt like the writing, it was an act of love. And I also believe we're in a period of time in which everything that has been underground and unknown is coming up to be looked at. And that's happening on an individual level as well as a collective level. And so parts of our history, a lot of Americans don't know. And so I also felt compelled to share that in some of what I discovered.
Don't mean to go off topic about writing the book and everything. When you mentioned about uranium shots, what was the whole purpose of the uranium shots, and what were they trying to accomplish? I mean, I've never heard of uranium shots.
Supposedly to see if it would help mentally ill people.
Wow.
The other thing they did, and this is just an aside, and I read the research, and then one of the elders that we met with on the Yakima Reservation, he started telling us the story. And the story was his uncle, like many prisoners, was in prison for some kind of petty theft. And he was promised that he could get out early, and he'd get, I don't remember, it was $25 or $100. It wasn't very much money. If he was willing to submit to uranium shots, and they were uranium shots in the testicles.
Oh,
And he got out, and he keeled over dead within a week of being discharged from prison.
oh my goodness.
So the only thing that I can discern is that during the Cold War years, we did a whole lot of stuff, in part because we were so afraid of the Russians. And so we did all kinds of research. And there are groups of people that are considered less desirables, and that's still true in our country. And because I'd been a foster kid, and a kid whose life was pretty bad early on, I was considered a less desirable, which means you go into a hospital and they could do anything they want on you back then.
Mm-hmm. And what are some of the other experiments they did as well, too? It's just like, you talked about some of the ones that went wrong, or what are some of the other experiments that said was successful, or was it okay?
Well, first of all, let me tell you how I got to Elgin, because I think that that's sort of the beginning of that part of the story. It was the end of my freshman year in college, and it was kind of miraculous that I even got to college, but I got to college on a couple scholarships and grants, and I had done well, but I was working weekends at a small hospital as a nursing assistant. And I started being hit on by the respiratory therapist, and he wouldn't leave me alone. He had to be at least 50 and I was 18.
Oh my gosh.
And he tried to pull me into the janitor's closet on numerous occasions. He eventually started showing up at school in the halls. I had moved to a different dorm and I had to take an L to get there. This is Chicago. And he showed up at the bottom of the L tracks and tried to pull me into his car. And luckily a businessman saw him and yelled at him, and he let go of me. And so I went into a pretty dark funk, and I quit my job. And then a couple days later, I realized they were closing the dorms and I had nowhere to go.
Oh no.
And I had no money and no job now. And I had tried combing the papers, but the thing I hadn't done is asked for help, because I thought at that age, as a lot of kids do at that age, is I shouldn't have to. I'm a grown-up. I should know how to do these things. And my default as a kid was, well, I can just kill myself. So I think I grabbed a bottle of aspirin or something. That's all I would have had around. I took a handful, and then I made myself vomit and realized I really don't want to die. This is really stupid. And I went and found the house mother, and I told her what was going on and what I'd done, and that I was sorry, and I really needed a grown-up's help. And she explained there were all kinds of jobs in the Chicago area for the summer, and she could think of a number of places that also came with room and board. And she'd help me, but she wanted to put me in a taxi and send me to the hospital first to get checked out medically. Well, I was just fine at the hospital, but they said they were going to send me across town to a place called Illinois State Psychiatric Institute. And its acronym was ISPI at the time. And they said I'd just have a few days to get my feet under me. And ISPI wouldn't let me out. And I had no idea why at the time. And they kept giving me drugs and more drugs. And because my mom was an alcoholic and an addict, I kept spitting the drugs out and thwarting their giving them to me. Eventually, I ran away after they started giving me shots and liquid Thorazine. They got me back, and then they eventually had me committed to the worst state hospital in the system. And I learned late that there was a nurse there who the day that I was committed kept coming in and out of my room and checking on me. And I felt like I had just totally shut down. I couldn't eat. I couldn't hardly move. I'd gone from being 18 and having a promising career or period in school, an eventual career. I was going into education at the time. And she kept coming in and out of my room to check on me. And shortly before 11, she said, my shift ends at 11 and I'm coming in and sitting with you till dawn if that's what it takes to get you to have some feelings, or you're not going to survive where you're being sent. And I finally broke down in the wee hours of the morning, and she told me that she was going to do everything in her power to try to get me out. That I had not done anything wrong, that she felt it was probably illegal that I was being sent there. And it took her, I didn't see her for the next 8 or 9 months. She was a graduate student. She had 3 little girls. She was a Lutheran minister's wife. And in those days, there weren't highways. And so she lived about 3.5 hours away and worked weekends. And one morning she said she felt haunted by me. And she woke up and she thought, I'm going to call the hospital and just make sure she's really not there anymore. She was convinced that they'd figure out I was a bright college student and let me out. And I was still there, and she was shocked. So then she drove to Elgin that day, and then she continued to come. And it took me 15 months to get out.
Wow. 15 months. Unbelievable.
And my discharge papers say that I was on the same drugs that Illinois State Psychiatric Institute had put me on. And that was Thorazine, Stelazine, Mellaril, Librium, and Dilantin. And Thorazine was actually created as a form of a chemical lobotomy. So instead of getting a lobotomy by having, something done to your brain, it was done chemically.
Now, was this like an experimental drug they were doing?
It was in many ways. I
Wow.
don't know for sure if it was experimental at Elgin, but it was one of the many drugs that Illinois State Psychiatric Institute was experimenting with.
Oh my gosh. And what were some of
And
the other bizarre experiments that you had seen or witnessed? It necessarily was not involving you though.
no, and well, I was experimenting on with all of those drugs I mentioned. And Sydney Krampitz later told me, I found her when I was writing the book, and we actually went back to Elgin together, and we went to the archival library in Springfield. And she told me that ISB, every floor had different research projects going on. And they frequently sent flyers out to the local hospitals looking for research subjects. And the floor that I was on was for young adults who had no family. And that's why I
Mm.
got put on that on that floor. And that's probably why the hospital sent me there.
Okay. All right. And then when you last visited the hospital, ever since you got discharged, were there any major changes that were made, like in terms of administration and processes and improvements or anything like that? Or what are some of the changes that were made?
I don't know in terms of processes, but Bill Briska, the man who worked there and lives in Elgin, he told me that there had been changes and there had been a number of investigations of Elgin. And we actually found a document at the archival library that's this thick, about 4 inches thick, that documents. They were actually the legislative department ordered an ongoing assessment of what was happening at Elgin, because people who had families were reporting it to the state because there were so untimely deaths. And this document's filled with autopsy results, etc. And one of the things that happened is they were incredibly overcrowded and had very few doctors and very few nurses. So often there was a nurse per 500 patients.
Wow.
Who just
500? That's short staffed.
who just set up medication in the morning, but then the rest of what happened during the day was the wards were run by aides and orderlies who had not been trained in medication management, and often over medicated patients to control them.
Wow.
And so many patients died because of bowel impactions, because Thorazine creates horrible constipation. And they weren't giving anyone anything for that. And so over time, your body, continues to get more and more impacted until your bowel explodes and you end up septic. And so a lot of deaths were due to that.
Mm.
And
That is something, I'll tell you. And of course you also have that in the book as well too. You also documented In Darkness Was My Candle, and Odyssey of Survival and Grace. We'll find out more how you manage to survive and inspire others. But first, listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by SonicWeb Studios. Visit online at SonicWebStudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. SonicWeb Studios is the answer. SonicWeb Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, time to give an official shout out to our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international war-wearing author Mia Molson-Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you'll love Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. Takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, 1 target, where truth is an illusion and those you love will be the first to go missing. It's available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing by Mia Molson-Zia has garnered great reviews and even loved and endorsed by Howard celebrities, including Joanna Cassidy, Forbes Riley, and many others. So grab your copy today for Girls Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon. Also, check out the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, and over 40 podcast platforms, heard in over 100 countries. Tickets with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. And for great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com and check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast. And for more great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com/Mia Molson-Zia for great books, merchandise, and more. Also support the Mike Wagner Show on Anchor FM, PayPal, themikewagnershow.com. You can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com at the Mike Wagner Show. Make sure you do so today. We're here with the author of The Darkness Was My Candle, and Odyssey of Survival and Grace, Lora DeVore, here on the Mike Wagner Show. And you talked about your time in Elgin State, and also how you first got into writing and everything. And who are some of your favorite writers and authors growing up?
I have so many. I certainly like Nancy Drew, among others. Of course, that dates me, but that's okay. I love Jane Eyre. I think I related to her. What else? I just read avidly. Those are the two that come to me right away. The Hardy Boys. I like the Hardy Boys, not as well as Nancy Drew, but
yeah, those were our favorites as well too. Growing up, along with Nancy Drew and more. What are some of your favorite books growing up?
I don't know. I can't remember specifically. And like I said, I don't know that I actually had a favorite. I didn't learn to read till close to the end of third grade, and then I became an avid reader. And what I would do is I tended to love anything I read. And often I would create a world around that book. And I remember probably, as I said, Jane Eyre might have probably been one of my favorites, and Nancy Drew. Somehow,
Okay.
and I know I read them more than once, but I can't remember the others.
Well, that's perfectly okay. At least you got some, ideas as well too. That you also have an advanced degree in clinical psychology and a recognized national expert and catalyst for change. And tell us about some of your works, and also the fact that you pretty much just encourage people, to what to do in these situations, how to get out, and everything else. And what some of the things you could have readers take on what you do. You get stuck in the situation, like say you got sent to Elgin State, can't get out, or like say you're in abusive situation, how do you get out? Or you get involved with sex trafficking, how do you get out? And also institutions and everything else, like how do you manage to get out of it?
I think that healing happens slowly, and I think that it's really important that people understand they can fully heal. That you can fully heal from trauma, no matter how bad it is. And I work at a number of places, but one of the places I work is through the Center for Mind Body Medicine out of Washington, D.C. with Dr. James Gordon. And that book has taken me all around the world. And James is already working with Ukrainians and putting a team together. But I worked with Parkland shootings after the shootings down there. And also down in the Gulf Coast after Katrina, and with firefighters and their families after 9/11, and so on and so forth. And one of the things that program teaches people is first about these amazing bodies we walk around in, and what an amygdala hijack is. An amygdala is the oldest part of our brain. It's the reptilian brain. It's back here. And this part of our brain is called the frontal cortex, and sometimes it's referred to as the executive center. Well, when we're stressed or when we've been traumatized, that frontal cortex goes offline, and our life is being led by the most primitive part of our brain, and we're in fight, flight, or freeze mode. So I always try to teach people skills, as does all my work at the center, and to let them know that they can get in the driver's seat of their life. They don't have to feel victimized by their own nervous system. We literally, through breathing techniques and other kind of techniques, can turn off the fight, flight, freeze. And it takes practice, but we can do it. The other thing, as I said, anyone can fully heal from trauma, but you have to commit yourself to a course of healing and know that it takes time. And it takes commitment. When I got out of Elgin, I determined that I would do whatever it took, no matter what it took, to not live my life with a leftover psychiatric diagnosis.
Okay.
And I think often people who get a diagnosis, that becomes who they are, and they don't know how to heal fully and move past that. And I include that people who've been traumatized. So I think another thing you have to do is commit yourself to healing and learn some tools to help regulate your nervous system. I also think that it's really important to remember that you are not your trauma or what happened to you. You are you. That's just something that happened to you. So you don't have to put on the mantle of trauma and wear it for the rest of your life. You can fully heal. The other thing is, I think community is really important. And I believe that keeping secrets is one of the worst things we can do, and it breeds shame. And so it's important to be open to find a way to be part of a community of some sort, of people who will encourage you. The other thing that's really important is when we've been traumatized, that part of our brain that I just described, that can only stay in hypervigilance mode. It's always waiting for the shoe to drop, the next bad thing to go wrong. And what can be really, really helpful is to go back through your memory banks and write down, create a timeline for yourself, all of the moments of kindness in your life. That's one of the things that helped me survive. In fact, I call all of those people and those that showed up at the crossroads in my life angels wearing compassion and human skin. And I had one after another after another. And what began to happen as I collected them and remembered them, something shifts in literally in our nervous system as we remember those kind of events. So we can literally begin to shift our own physiology as we remember those events. And then it reminds us, oh, yes, this is how I survived with these people's help. It may be a school teacher, it may be a neighbor, it may be a friend's mother or father. It could be anyone. It might be someone at a grocery store. In fact, one of the people in my life that's the funniest one was at one point in my life, my mother would leave me alone for days on end, and there was never food in the house. And I started stealing spinach from the local store.
Hi, I'm taking some from Popeye. I can imagine that.
That's right. That's exactly what made me think spinach was good for me, because of Popeye. I mean, the commercials and the show itself.
Oh my gosh. Who didn't love Popeye? I'll tell you.
That's right. So I'd steal spinach. And one day I got caught. And apparently the gentleman who owned the store knew that I'd been stealing spinach. And he said, you're not going to feel very good about yourself if you keep being a stealer. You don't want to be known as a thief. But I've got an idea for you. You must be eating that spinach for a reason. And I said, we don't hardly ever have food at my house. He says, tell you what, if every time you'll come into my store for spinach, you'll sweep my floor for me, I'll give you as much spinach as you want.
Nice, nice trade-off. I like that. Sweeping for spinach.
That's right. That's right. Another place, in fact, I just saw it recently. It's now, I think, condominiums or something, but there was an old hotel in Waukegan, Illinois called the Thekarcher Hotel. And back then it was very fancy. And one day I was wandering through it. I used to pretend like I was a movie star and wander the halls. And where I lived, there was no lock on the bathroom door. And I never knew which man my mom might have home who'd just come busting in the bathroom. So I didn't feel safe taking a shower there or much of anything. And so I saw that the bathrooms were off the hallway, and there were towels and there was soap and everything in the bathroom. So I went in and I helped myself to a bath. I was probably about 8.5, 9 years old. And after that, I'd go to the Thekarcher Hotel and take a bath a couple times a week.
Interesting.
One day the maid, as I was coming out, she said, what room are you staying at here in the hotel? And I said, I'm not staying in a hotel. She said, why don't you take a bath at your own house? And I said, because there's always men there and the doors don't lock. And she said, honey, you come on, I think it was Tuesday and Friday or something, and I'll make sure you always have towels and what you need. And several times she left me bubble bath. And I'll make sure that you don't get in trouble. So that was another angel.
And you didn't have to work for it either. You don't have to sweep, clean, or anything like that.
No, that's right. That's right. But I didn't mind the sweeping.
I think I'm getting some pretty good ideas here. Sweeping for spinach and bubble baths every Tuesday and Friday. And it's like, and I think we're trying to get some listeners some ideas and maybe what else we could just somewhere along those lines. Maybe say I'm trying to think here. It's like, maybe like feed a pet, get bread or something, or along those lines. I'm getting some really good ideas here.
So it's important that people who are listening to this understand that we are not just our trauma. And by going back through your memory banks and just remembering the goodness in your life, because you wouldn't have survived. You wouldn't be alive if there wasn't some of that.
Mm-hmm.
And
So,
now there's been a lot of research on gratitude and practicing gratitude regularly every day before you go to bed at night.
mm-hmm.
I practice gratitude and for what I'm grateful for that day. And every morning it can be helpful to set an intention.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my intentions is to be loving presence in every moment and every situation. And that might be by complimenting the person, at the drive-through coffee place.
Okay.
To try to help make someone else's day. And that
Okay.
helps us feel good as well as it's being kind and giving to another person. And you never know when you can have there's the possibility of changing the course of someone's day and even their life.
Mm. And I think that seemed very lacking these days in today's society. And of course, social media can also impact as well, too. Besides, give them a compliment like you're getting coffee or saying thank you to a waitress or anything like that, or opening doors. What are some of the other simple acts of kindness that you can make someone else's day?
Watch your road rage. I think I'm aware of that, having just driven nearly completely across the country and
Wow.
seeing how many people get impatient. And they act like they're going to die if they don't get ahead of you. Letting somebody come in who really wants to get into your lane because perhaps they need to turn left. I think those are some things we can do. We don't have to be in such a big hurry.
Mm-hmm.
Some other things that we can do, not just but for others, but for ourselves, is to really understand that we're all so much more alike than we are different.
Hmm.
And to appreciate that, to appreciate people's differences. And of course, that's something that a lot of people are having trouble with today and have a lot of trouble with. There's so much divisiveness now.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't, one of the things that I learned and is that we can't necessarily walk an entire journey with someone, but it's the quality of our presence that makes a difference. And I want to repeat that because it's so important. The quality of our presence is what makes a difference. And an upstairs neighbor named Dale Foss, who I only knew for less than a month, when she was moving away, I fell apart. At that point in my life, I felt like an alien who'd come to a planet that was hostile. I didn't know one adult that could even tolerate kids, let alone like them. I'd never heard the word love. I knew no tenderness. I'd already had one suicide attempt at that point. And when I went to say goodbye to Dale, she was an upstairs, she lived in an apartment above us. I just broke down. I started to sob and I said, "You can't leave me. I just found you. You can't leave me." And she
Mm-hmm.
pulled me into her arms and was rubbing my back and just kept saying, "I love you. You're such a good girl. I love you." I'd never heard those words, but as she said it, something came alive in me. And I knew, I literally had this aha moment of, oh, that's why I'm here, to learn how to receive this thing called love and how to give it. And from then on, it was like my guiding star. And I believe that many, many spiritual traditions today and the great spiritual traditions talk about that's why we are here, is to learn to love
Mm-hmm.
and to learn to receive it.
And thus the title of the book, Darkness Was My Candle, an Odyssey of Survival and Grace. And how'd you come up with the words, Darkness Was My Candle? We love to hear about it.
You know, there were periods of my life that was so dark, that was so hard, but I really believe that in that darkness, something can grow, that darkness that I'm referring to is much like the darkness of winter, when it looks like nothing is growing, particularly in the Midwest. I don't know about where people are listening. I know you know what I mean from North Dakota.
9 months of it, I'll tell you that. And we
That's
have almost winter, definitely winter, and construction season. That'll give you an idea. So
That's right. But there's a time in which everything that normally grows is dormant during whatever kind of winter people have, but it's particularly pronounced in the Midwest.
Mhm.
And it'd be easy to assume that nothing's going to happen, but something is happening. Something's pregnant deep in the earth. And of course, then we often see those in the Midwest as these tiny shoots of tulips and the grass greening and wildflowers, etc. And that's what was happening in the darkness inside my life. There was something growing and blooming, but it was growing in the dark for a long time until it came out to the light.
That is really fascinating. And of course, lastly, what can readers get from after reading the book?
I believe they can get hope as well as inspiration. And for two reasons. There are so many people that believe that if you have multi-level trauma and even a single traumatic incident, you'll never be the same. And the truth is, you won't ever be the same. But that doesn't mean you have to continue to suffer. You can be more than you were before that experience. We now know there's a stage called post-traumatic growth and resilience, and you can even grow beyond that. And I think people grow from being a survivor to being a thriver, and to post-traumatic growth and resilience. And so I hope that they'll get that sense of hope. If I can overcome what I overcame, including being prostituted by my own mother at age 9 for the first time, I think anybody can overcome. And I also think that we've got to begin to practice self-love. We can't completely love another human being unless we can love ourselves. And hopefully they'll learn a little bit about that in the reading my book. And my book in part was also a way to honor this child who was me at age 9, the picture on the book. Wow. It was a way to honor her and the life that she lived, as well as to speak for those who haven't had a voice. The other thing is, I think the book also, towards the end of it, in the second to the last chapter, I end up revealing a lot of the research that I came across while I was doing research for the book. Okay. Related to Elgin State Hospital. So it's also in some ways an expose, at least that last chapter is, and I think earlier chapters too. It exposes the dark history of psychiatry, among other things. We have a very dark history in the world of the psychological sciences. Okay. And the publisher, who's a Jungian analyst, psychiatrist, he said about this book, he feels like it could become a form of truth and reconciliation for the psychiatric community. And I also believe that psychiatry has to change. And there are many systems that need to change. And I think people will become much more self-aware, as well as much more aware and insightful about a number of things in their own life, as well as our community's lives.
That is very important as well. And very, very, I'm just touched by it too, Laura, I got to say that. And where can we find your book, Darkness Was My Candle, an Odyssey of Survival and Grace at?
It's in Barnes and Noble and Amazon and Confer Books and Target. And I think it's also in Walmart, somebody told me.
Okay. You
Go
can
to a
get
lot of different places. Also, my website is loradevore.com. There's a lot of information on there, so I invite people to go and take a look.
and we will certainly do so. What's coming up for Lora DeVore later on this year? We'll find out just 1 minute. You listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at by official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson's The Missing, available on Amazon and paperback and ebook. We'll be back with author Lora DeVore of Darkness Was My Candle and Odyssey of Survival and Grace after this time out. We're back with author Lora DeVore on the Mike Wagner Show at Darkness Was My Candle and Odyssey of Survival and Grace. Very compelling story. A day you being a masterful storyteller. That was very, I learned a lot from you as well. And what else can we expect you in 2022 and beyond, Lora?
Well, I suspect the rest of 22, I'm going to be promoting this book a lot. I've already done a tour to the West Coast and done some work through, I've done a lot of interviews, but also I'm really interested in beginning to open the world of awareness to people in universities. So like after this tomorrow, I leave for Allegheny College in Cumberland, Maryland, and do a number of events. And I'll eventually go down to Houston and back to the West Coast and then back to the East Coast this coming year. So I'll be going to be doing a lot of that kind of stuff.
Wow, you're going to be all over the place, which is amazing.
And the wonderful thing is, because of my work with the Center for Mind Body Medicine, and there's probably 100 in this country. We have faculty all over the world now, but in this country, there's a couple hundred of us. So I know people in many major universities and all over the country. And so that makes it easy to get access and to get invited to some of those places. People have been prodding me to write a book for years, long before I even started this book.
That certainly is amazing, and we're glad you did. We're looking forward to reading it. And who do you consider biggest influence in your career?
I have a number of them in my career, you say.
Yes.
Well, considering that my career now includes being an author, Dina Metzger, who is an author of over 30 books and plays and all kinds of stuff. And it's Metzger. She's one of my heroes or heroines. Another is a woman named Dr. Sue Morter of Morter Institute. And another one is a woman named Alexandra Leslie. And another is Dr. Lori Beaver Bandeckick, and all of those people are resources on my website as well. I think they probably have been some of the biggest inspirations to me and encouragers of me at this point in my life. But over my lifetime, I've had so many, including Sydney Krampitz, the woman who got me out of Elgin State Hospital. And there is a video of me and Sydney having a conversation on my website. It was interesting. Shortly before Thanksgiving this past year, I knew Sydney was in an assisted living home because she'd had a bad fall and she was in a lot of pain. And I just had this sense I should go see her. And we'd been visiting regularly, and then COVID happened. And I was able to drive down to Kansas City with a good friend of mine who's also my photographer and website designer. And she was able to get video footage of Sydney and I having a conversation.
Wow.
And then 2 weeks later, Sydney died.
Oh my gosh.
And I just had a sense she wasn't going to be with us on the planet much longer. And she was just ecstatic that we came and that we did that. And so, she felt like I had become her legacy, because this was a woman who literally risked everything. She risked her graduate school placement. She risked her job, and so much to get me out of there.
Certainly fascinating, and just so amazing as well. And what's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point?
To love yourself unconditionally, and to know that you're more than your physical self. There's a spiritual essence, a soul.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we are. We're not human beings that have a soul. We're a soul having a human experience.
I like that. That's certainly amazing. I'll take that to heart as well. We're here with author Lora DeVore of Darkness Was My Candle and Odyssey of Survival and Grace on the Mike Wagner Show. Laura, very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely fantastic. Learned a lot from you. Looking
Thank
forward to
you.
having you again soon. Make sure you keep us up to date.
Right.
Keep in touch. Love to have you back. Once again, tell us about your upcoming projects. What's your website? How do people contact you? Where can people purchase or check out your book?
Okay, my website is Lora DeVore, and it's LORADEV like Victor, ORE.com. And let's see, you can check out the book on Barnes and Noble, Target, Amazon, Walmart, and I think, and confer through the publisher directly. And if you live somewhere where there's a small bookstore, it can be ordered from any bookstore. So if you
Yes.
live somewhere in a small town and they don't have a Barnes and Noble, if you just go to your local bookseller and say, could you order this book? It's available to any bookseller.
That's a really good idea. I think a lot of people should do that as well. Ask and they shall receive. So once again, Laura, very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely amazing. Looking forward to having you again soon. Make sure you keep us up to date. Keep in touch. Love to have you back. We wish you all the best. You've got a great future ahead of you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Mike. I was honored to be here.